Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Saving Gen Alpha. I am your host, Ryan Heath. And today I have a very special guest with me, Nicole Ward, who is the plaintiff in that case. And we're going to go through just the backstory to give y'all an idea of what it is actually that happened to her daughter, Gabrielle, and how it is that we got to the point where we're at. So, Nicole, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Nicole Ward, and I am the mom of a very brave Gabrielle Ward. And yeah, we just started with this January of 2022. We had actually seen a video of Gavin Newsom at SoFi Stadium with 70,000 unmasked people. And that's where this all started.
I remember that. That was Gavin Newsom and Magic Johnson, right? At the football game. It was a playoff game, and he was violating his own mask mandate.
Mm-hmm. And there was like every celebrity. I mean, literally, I don't think anybody who didn't want to have a mask on had a mask on. And so with my daughter coming up on, 2 years under COVID restrictions, we were, at our end of that and saying, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to comply. And this was 100% her decision. Well, I did bring it to her the day I showed her the video, and I was like, can you believe this? This is so crazy. Like, you've got to go to school today with like 30 kids in a class and you all have to have your masks on and nobody's sick. Like, how does this even make sense? So I said, if there's any time, and I didn't even say like, if it's today, I just said, if there's a time that you decide you don't want to wear your mask anymore, I'm cool with that. And about 20 minutes later, she said, it's today.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just so everyone understands, Nicole is a mother. She's got a couple kids. When COVID happened, her kids were still at Coronado Unified School District. Gabrielle was at least. Mm-hmm. And she was subject, at least for years. Was she a freshman when COVID started?
Yeah, she was. So she got 9 months through her freshman year. And it was really a unique opportunity for her because Coronado has a secondary program called the Coronado School of the Arts. And you have to audition to get into the program. And so she had done that. We had an interdistrict transfer. And she was so excited. I mean, this kid just lived, breathed, singing, dancing, acting. And so it was going to be an amazing high school experience for her. And unfortunately, it just didn't end up that way.
So you're actually you don't live in Coronado.
I worked at the time in Coronado, and Coronado is actually really strict about their guidelines in order to attend their schools. They only have 2,800 total students between their 4 schools. And because I worked on the island, I was able to have her apply, and they chose her. And so the first 9 months were great. I mean, she met some kids. Most of the kids in that program all come from off of Coronado Island. So I think it was like the best opportunity for her to try to have a typical high school experience, even though she hadn't gone to Coronado schools before, because so many kids were coming from outside the district. Everybody was new. So it was a really great opportunity to make new friends because everybody was looking for new friends.
And so just to be clear, this is a specialized school that she wanted to attend because the program there was specifically for singing, acting, and other basic arts.
Yeah. So it's part of the Coronado Unified as part of like the high school. So you go to this high school, and then this would be an extra 2 hours every day. So she was going to school 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in order to take on these extra classes. And so it was singing and dancing and acting and yeah.
So she just to kind of have people understand, she starts as a freshman, goes through 9 months, and then COVID happens. And what happens to Gabrielle once COVID happens? You just walk us through that. I mean, she was a student in California, which is the epicenter of the abuse here for COVID mandates. So
yeah. So immediately, I mean, like everybody else, it was put on lockdown. And, we thought at first it was only going to be a few weeks, but it ended up being the whole rest of the school year. And, they had their virtual learning. Teachers were checking in once a week, like to maybe see if your kid was okay. I mean, they went from, she went from 8 hours a day of interaction in person with teachers and friends to nothing pretty much. And that's devastating. I mean, these are kids who are thriving on the opportunity to connect with other people and build relationships, and it's just literally ripped away from them at probably one of the most, challenging times of their lives anyway. Switching from middle school to high school is always a challenge, especially if you're not with your regular friend group.
Yeah. So, I mean, what sort of behavioral differences or impacts did you see COVID having on Gabrielle when she was at Coronado, and how the policies impacted her?
Yeah. So prior to that time, I mean, my kid literally, I would tell you, she was super goofy, super outgoing. We used to joke that she never met a stranger. She loved singing, dancing, acting. It didn't matter who was watching. And I saw my kid, you know, turning within herself, like losing an identity almost. Like, I didn't hear any more singing. I didn't see any more dancing. It hit me because I was like, I always loved hearing her sing. I mean, it was just literally bring a smile to my face, bring joy to my heart. And I just realized that was gone. It was very infrequent. And so I think the first couple months, we all kind of tolerated it, knowing, hey, back in September, we'll be back at school. There's no big deal. And then I started realizing even more that the district was coming out with policies saying, hey, we're not even sure we're going to reopen. And I was like, what are you saying? Like this can't even be real. And so at the time, we actually, believe it or not, we drove an hour and a half each way to bring Gabby to Coronado Unified. We lived in a small town called Ramona, and they have a small school district there, but it's actually bigger than Coronado's. And they had come up with a reopening plan that allowed each of the kids to be on campus several days a week with their friends, with their teachers. And as soon as they had that in place, I took that and I gave it to Coronado. And I said, you guys have fewer students. You could totally manage this. Let's get it together. And the entire board of trustees was like, yeah, sounds great. We're not showing. We're just trying to do what's safe. I'm like, this is crazy. Well, the worst thing that they ever did was put me on a thread with other parents, because I kicked them off my thread, started, chiming in with this other group of parents who really wanted their kids to go back to school. And I fought them, 6-8 months, weekly, going to board meetings, writing emails, just begging for them to reopen. There was no need for that school district to be shut down with 2,800 total kids. There's just no need. And they refused. And so it wasn't till February of 21. So at this point, the school had been shut down for 11 months. Almost, I would say, I'm not even sure that outside of San Diego Unified, which is by far the worst compared to, well, then there's LA Unified, but in San Diego County, they were closed the longest. And so the impact for these kids was huge. Now, I do feel like there was probably less of an impact for kids who lived in Coronado, who had friends in Coronado. They kind of, still got that socialization option. But for all of these kids who had come onto the island to go to this school to participate, and it wasn't just singing, acting, dancing. They also had stuff for graphic design. They have stuff for media, for band and orchestra. So there were hundreds of kids that were impacted and had, signed up to go to this program.
So just let's start, I guess, with we've been talking about 2020, 2021, them shutting down the school. So they reopened in February of 22. Is that right?
21.
Okay. I get my times right. They reopened in February of 21. And then they decided to reopen with a required mask mandate. Is that right?
Well, they did, and it was a limited amount of days per week. So they had it where half the kids were coming on Tuesday, Thursday. The other half of the kids were coming Thursday, Friday, for which I pointed out, these kids are struggling to have relationships. And so first off, they're not even necessarily coming at the same time of their friends. But no matter what, all of these kids are still having 5 consecutive days in a row without teachers, without friends. And it was not going to undo or start to diminish the impacts of them being so isolated. So when I reached out to the school about that, because I could see, in my opinion, like Gabby was drowning. She was drowning. I have emails, I've written them saying, she is drowning and you're the only one who can turn this around. What can you do? They said to me, well, she can actually come back every day because you asked. I was so livid because I knew there were kids out there that had to be being impacted as she was, and they were not offering this to all the kids. They were only offering if you asked, which is disgusting.
And how many kids even knew that was an option to ask?
Nobody.
That's
I mean, I literally just found myself begging because I had nothing left that I could do about that. And then they tell me, oh, yeah, it's totally cool. You could do that because you asked.
okay. So we ended up meeting sometime around, I think it was December of 2021 or January of
We met
22.
December of 22 because the Newsom thing took place the last weekend of January. And I believe that Gabby's first day of protest was January 31st.
That's right. Yeah, it's in the complaint.
Yeah. So you and I think we first spoke the following week. But it's really crazy because to me, this whole thing has been a divine intervention. When Gabby decided that she was going to go to school and protest that day, I really didn't know what was in front of us, just knew that I was going to support my girl no matter what. And there had been other protests going on at other school districts, especially in more conservative areas, because they were getting better results. And for those who think that Coronado is conservative, that's actually just a falsity. They are so liberal. I think the only thing that's conservative might be the Navy SEALs. When I started with this, I started asking friends, like, have you seen anything online? Is there like anybody that we can even reach out to, like, understand the rights of these kids? Who could I possibly talk to? I mean, I didn't think I was going to Google it. Like, I was like, I just need a person. Like, I need a reputable, talented, educated person to tell me exactly what her rights are. And I will be certain to make sure that everyone knows what they are and that they should be upholding those rights. And so thankfully I had come across, someone recommended Tracy Henderson to me. And I had seen some things that she had put online, and she just seemed like she was a really tough lady, like just got her stuff together. And I was like, I like her. I got to call her. And so I called, and she was getting inundated by so many parents who their kids were kind of juggling that same kind of thing. Do I have rights? What can I do? Can I stand up at school? All these kind of things. And when she called me back, she gave me like 30-minute rundown real quick of everything that I needed to know at that moment to just survive through the first day of protest. And somehow along the way, doing more stuff online, I came across the Gavel Project, and I didn't know what it was. But as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, I just know this is like a connection that I need to try to make. And I filled out this form that you had online, and I just started to like pray. I was like, please just call me back. Just call me back. And then when you called me and you said, well, I've got this, California attorney that I want you to talk to, and her name is Tracy Henderson. I was like, yes. Like, this just suddenly came full circle in just a short amount of time. And it was like just confirmation that we were headed in the right path.
And just so the California State Bar and everyone is aware, I talked to Tracy Henderson before I went out to California and started teaching kids how to civilly disobey their protests. So if the State Bar has anything to say, they can go pound sand. And we'll talk about that more, because I did get a response from them at some point as it relates to this case. So I just to kind of give a bit more backstory for where I was coming at, we started the Gavel Project in October of 2021. And the reason that we started it is because my sister was being threatened with termination from her job as a nurse at Phoenix Children's Hospital. They're one of the biggest employers here in the state of Arizona. They actually do like $500 million a year in no, that might not be right. It's a huge number in revenue every year that they actually generate. So big organization. I was a first-year attorney at the time. I had graduated from law school in 2020. And with just being a lawyer for 1 year, I decided to try and help my sister get an exemption from the vaccine mandate. And I ended up helping her get one, not by asking and not by applying for an exemption, but by demanding it. And so we sent 3 demand letters threatening to sue the board all individually for breach of contract, for breach of employment contract based on a novel theory that I came up with. And then the day after she was supposed to get fired, she got a letter saying, you get to keep your job. So it was early October. I remember I just had my birthday, and I went to my wife the day after we got that notice. And I said, I got to do something. I can't just sit around. I've shown that I can succeed in this. And so we decided after some prayer that it was time to start a nonprofit. And I quit my job, and my wife was 7 months pregnant with our second at the time. And We liquidated a vehicle to help fund it. And I was basically looking for people like you starting in October to try and set up lawsuits that were basically predicated on the Rosa Parks model. I'm a pretty big supporter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his teachings, especially those on peaceful noncompliance, civil disobedience. And so I took that to heart, and I met Tracy through an organization called the Unity Project. And that was in, I believe, December of 21. And from there, she agreed basically to let me use her law license to go and try and recruit people to have as plaintiffs in litigation. And one of the first people I met was you. And so, yeah, it was really interesting because I was early January, I was flying around, starting to meet with families and educate them on their rights. And I was making videos. I was trying to promote basically the concept of civil noncompliance and educate people on their rights. And it kind of spiraled into us linking up and deciding to work with each other with this protest. I think I went to Coronado for the first time in February of 21. But we had been communicating for a while, and we decided that this was something that we wanted to do as far as litigation goes. And that's when I first interacted with the board at the school board meeting. I think I said the word okay, like I was talking to a child maybe 14 times during that conversation. And in essence, if you watch the video, it's me patronizing the board about how we're going to sue them all to oblivion because they are violating Gabby's constitutional rights. How miserable she was at the time. I remember she actually wore a battery operated jacket that particular day because it was so cold that she had to stay warm, and they were just kicking her out of class every day. I mean, she'd been protesting for how long was it? It was 2 weeks at that point.
Yeah, it was probably 2 to 3 weeks at that point for sure when we approached the board. Yeah, when you spoke.
Yeah, so I think the thing that I remember most about that statement in the immediate aftermath, and I forget the gentleman's name. As soon as I get done saying I'm not wearing a mask and there's nothing you can do about it, I went and sat down right next to you and next to Gabrielle, and this gentleman who is like the head of the Democrat Party of Coronado Island accosted me. He got right in my face. I'd never had that happen before. I mean, basically threatening to fight me. And then he threatened to call the police, and I said, go ahead and call the police. Like, I'm not leaving. I'm not putting a mask on. Like, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not going anywhere. So yeah, I don't know if he called the police or not, but I stuck around for a while. They never showed up.
Well, they were actually there that day because they always had police at all the board meetings. And so it was funny that nobody actually did anything despite his request.
Yeah, I mean, I would have sued that police officer if they touched me, so it would have been a really bad idea for them. But anyway, I got 6 bar charges just from that one statement that I made. And I had 3 in California, 3 bar charges against me, basically claiming that I was engaged in the unauthorized practice of law because I claimed to be an attorney in this speech. And apparently none of them were smart enough to realize that I'd already associated with local counsel. So there was no unauthorized practice of law at issue. And I got 3 bar charges here in Arizona. And the ones in Arizona were immediately dismissed because they were stupid. And basically it was me speaking at a school board meeting, not litigating or anything like that. So, but the California ones, I actually got a letter from the state bar in response to that. And they were threatening to have me arrested if I spoke at any more school board meetings.
You struck a nerve. Yes. It was fun. It was fun to watch all of them like kind of wiggling, because this is really the first time that somebody's kind of fighting back up against all of their tyranny that they've been putting on these kids. At this point, it's been 2 years almost that this has been going on with the COVID stuff and the masks and the this and that. So this is the first time they really got some pushback.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny to me when I got the letter from the State Bar of California, because I knew that it was baseless. So my response was to write them my own cease and desist notice, and I threatened to sue them. And I haven't heard back from them since. So they didn't like that. But it's actually on the website. We'll put a link to it in the show notes if you want to read that letter explaining the whole situation. But the crazy thing about it was I don't know if they're married or not. I believe they are, so don't quote me on this. But we had members of the Board of Trustees for Coronado Unified School District, their spouses, or at least their significant others, were the ones that were filing bar charges against me. By the way, these people are attorneys, so they know what they were doing. And they were filing frivolous bar charges in an attempt to scare us, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
So the protest continued. Gabrielle ended up going for, how long was it? 6 weeks?
6 weeks. Yeah. And this, it kind of is funny because her first class that she went to without a mask, she just walked in and she peacefully sat down, and her teacher, ironically, US history, tells her that she needs to put a mask on. And she says, no, thank you. And he's like, well, I'm really not asking, you need to put your mask on. And she's like, no, not doing that anymore. And he called down to the office and had one of the assistant principals come and escort her down to the principal to have a discussion. And they called me and told me that I needed to pick her up. This is within the first 30 minutes of the day. And I said, no, actually, I don't have to. She has the right to, say her piece. And she doesn't need to come home, and I'm not coming to get her. I'll see her at the end of the day. And that's exactly what I did. And we did that every day for 6 weeks. And despite every day I still have them on my phone to this day, phone calls that I got from the attendance office saying that she was not on campus, but yet she's tied into their Wi-Fi. She is attending. They wouldn't let her in the classroom. So some teachers were kind enough to leave the door open that she could possibly hear what they were saying. She had kids in the first class. The teacher that turned her in allowed other students to sit in the back of the classroom with their mask under their chin, not over their mouth. We have photographs, and never turned those kids in. Those are baseball kids, football kids, right? But we're going to pick on a kid we don't really know. And she was one child out of this entire high school that was protesting. And literally, this is the hill that Coronado Unified wants to die on. One child. So she had teachers that would tell her, you can't come in my classroom without a mask. You're going to get me sick. You're going to kill my wife. They refused her testing to keep up with her schooling if she didn't show up and put her mask on. And they were happy to leave her outside. So in the mornings in Coronado, it tends to be really cold, usually has a marine layer, especially in early spring. So I have a Milwaukee heated jacket, and I gave it to her with a battery in it, and she wore it. It thankfully is kind of windbreaker material a bit. And then during the day, there's days where the last couple weeks in San Diego, it's been 55 degrees in the morning and it's 85 degrees midday. The change in temperature is really there. So sometimes she'd be out there, it'd be really, really hot. She'd have no place to really get out of the elements. And they would leave her there all day long. Administrators acting like she wasn't there, teachers acting like she wasn't there. And so these teachers talked the other kids into ignoring her and making her feel like an outcast and, feeling like a leper for lack of a better term, because she really was on an island in the quad by herself for most of the day for 6 consecutive weeks.
And it was more than that too, because maybe we could talk about some of the specific treatment that she was subjected to by some of the individual defendants that we sued, like her teacher, Mr. Limai. I don't know how to say his last name.
I think it's Lemay, maybe.
Yeah. But this was a gentleman, and he's a little bit older. He had someone who he believed was basically high risk at home and wouldn't go near Gabby at all. Do you want to talk about
even outside? Which is a little crazy. He left her books on at one other area, made her get up and go get her books that he was delivering from her. Because right as this had happened was the change of semester. So literally, this is the first day of the new semester. So these teachers didn't have any relationship with Gabby at all, which I think made it really easy for them to behave in the manner in which they did. Because had they known her, had they known how sweet and kind she is, I don't know that they would have been able to do that to her.
Yeah.
Although I have to say her CUSD teachers that she'd been engaged with for almost 2 years had no problem. Because they too would, although they were supposed to leave the doors open and allow her to engage, they closed the doors, they locked the doors. They gave her assignments that were group assignments as individual assignments that she couldn't have possibly ever completed solo.
So people understand this. They assigned her to sing a duet without a partner.
Correct.
In an acting class. And CUSD is the component, by the way, for everyone wondering, that actually is the fine arts component of the school. So Keep in mind when Gabrielle would show up in the mornings, she was there for 8 hours. She was not being excluded just for a few hours a day, as most students were. This wasn't a 9 to 3 type situation. It was all day.
Yes.
And so when it came to the CUSD stuff, it was especially infuriating for me because there were kids inside the room playing wind instruments without masks on. Yet Gabrielle, because she simply decided to stand up and say no thank you and actually take a stand for her liberty and for the liberty of her peers who are all sheepish and cowards, unfortunately, had no interest in helping her. She was punished. She was targeted. She was actually the one who was singled out and made an example of by the school, which is partly why we sued. I mean, the treatment of this girl, for people to understand, was so abhorrent. But let's talk about the bathroom drill for a second. I mean, so talk us through what happened on that day. This was, I believe, February of 22.
Yeah. They had a scheduled lockdown drill. And in all lockdown drills, the students, everybody has to be in a classroom or in the admin building, someplace where you can lock the door. That's the purpose of it, right? So it's kind of like we go through this drill, everybody gets in their space, the doors are locked, and then they will check each room and release everybody throughout the process.
It's an active shooter drill, basically.
Correct. And in this particular case, one of the vice principals, Gabby, I don't know if I can't recall whether he went to her in advance or it was kind of like it was happening and she reached out and said, what am I supposed to do? But either way, he told her to go so she's in the quad on the first floor, tells her to go upstairs to the second floor bathroom and hide in a bathroom that doesn't even have a lock. So she literally was the only person on campus that was not in a locked, safe space during the active shooter drill.
Yeah, so they put her in a bathroom where she would be a fish in a barrel if someone actually was on campus. Their plan for her was to get shot.
Yeah, I mean, you hope, in your mind, you're like, if this was real, maybe somebody would act differently. But I don't know. I mean, after they continued their behavior for 6 straight weeks, I can't trust that they would have. I mean, that's the reality of that situation. They did attempt to suspend her in the first couple of days of the protest, for which I signed the suspension and said, well, thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow. And we were let back on campus. And even though she had a suspension, they let her be there. And she never missed a day until she did miss one day. That was the day after they had Coronado police come without just cause and attempt to remove her for trespassing.
Yeah, that was when she was given an in-school suspension. Isn't that right?
No, they had actually given her a suspension.
suspension.
Yeah, and I brought her anyway.
And they retracted that later, though, if I recall.
The first one they did.
Yeah.
But this particular one, they had I actually went to the watch commander of Coronado Police the night before, telling him what I was going to do. It wasn't going to be a shocker to anybody that this is what we were doing. This is what Gabby wanted to do. She didn't want the district to tell her, like, you don't have the right to do this and we're going to demand this is over. So she wanted to go back to school. And the watch commander said, well, is she going to be doing anything to anybody? No, she hasn't been doing anything so far. And they said, well, we won't be doing anything either. So what the district did was they had the resource officer come and be the bad guy representing the police department in a way that they said they would not.
And when we checked, we did file a public records request as well for the documents from the police department, and they didn't even put an instant report together.
No.
They threatened to arrest a girl for trespassing and didn't even make a note of it.
Nope. Yeah. So we had that. I mean, I had countless meetings with the principal, attended every board meeting. I literally at the beginning was writing a daily update to the board. Like, this is what happened today at school. Here's what's going on with Gabby. They were fully aware of all of these things. And at no point did any adult have just the ability to see through this situation to say, I don't think we're fighting the right fight right now. Like, this just seems really crazy that we're focused so heavily on one child who's literally doing nothing but sitting and peacefully protesting. It just seemed mind-boggling to me. I mean, you've literally got some of the most educated people who live on that island incapable of making an educated decision.
It's rather shocking. I mean, they were handing out, just so people understand, they were handing out masks to students to put on to stop the spread of COVID that had warnings on the boxes that said these things don't work to stop the spread of COVID. Mm-hmm. But they were requiring them anyway. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how stupid this was. Mm-hmm. And it's, I mean, Gabrielle was smart enough to realize at the beginning, like a lot of kids were, that one, she was in a group of people without any predisposed, I forget what you call it, but basically chronic health conditions or anything that would put her in a higher category. She had a 99.99% survival probability based on her age and her health conditions. And she was perfectly healthy throughout this entire time. And she knew that masks were dumb. They were face ornaments that had no benefit. I mean, even Anthony Fauci at the beginning of the pandemic is on, well, you can pull this up. We'll actually do it. Just pretend like I'm pointing to it and we'll pause it and put it in. But I mean, you can see right there, he told Mark Zuckerberg in an interview, and there are emails to this effect as well, that masks do not work to stop the spread of COVID-19. But for some reason, and he later explained this in Congress when he was being questioned about it, that it just kind of appeared, it was just made up. But there was no scientific basis, there never has been, for the efficacy of masks to stop a viral respiratory disease. It's never worked in human history. Yet for some reason here, it was adopted as if though it was a one-size-fits-all solution. And Gabrielle was smart enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to be a sheep. I'm not going to be someone who's going to follow a mandate that is not based in reality. And so she, I mean, along with a handful of other students that I helped protest as well, was one of the bravest kids, in my opinion, in the entire country to take a stand and say, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I am not going to be a slave to this nonsensical concept that you're trying to shove down my throat. And so she took a stand, and for 6 weeks, she was tortured. I mean, you want to talk a bit more about just what happened to her during the protest period so we can kind of fill the viewers in on what her state of mind?
I think what I've learned about Gabby is that she doesn't want anybody to worry for her, right? Like, she'll come and she'll have a smile on her face and things will seem like they're fine. But, and maybe they didn't bother her quite so much then, as far as like, she's okay. She's kind of an introvert. She's okay to sit by herself for a while and, you know, be in her own space. But I will tell you, it's been 4 years since then. And I've seen, there's days I say that I don't even recognize her, mostly because she does occasionally battle with depression, and she struggles with making relationships work and stepping outside of her comfort zone, mostly because during that time, the school really made it seem like she wasn't important. And they just left her out there. You'd have teachers pass by and nobody would acknowledge. Principal would go the whole day and never even check on her. She could have left. She actually would. She would go to lunch off campus. They don't even have like rules to like check out a campus or whatever over there, and then come back and like nobody. I'm like, what if she never came back? Was anybody noticing she was gone? Like, these were people who were hired to protect her, and they failed so miserably. Right. And so even if you're someone who is super strong in personality, I don't know how that can't impact you. Right. When you realize like nobody cares whether I'm here or not here. But I will tell you that I was engaged with her all day, every day, whether it was text or phone or whatever. I knew exactly what was going on, recognizing that, making sure she was safe because nobody else was. And I only worked 10 minutes from there. But this whole thing has really caused her, and I think in a very positive way, her focus for her career, and she's finishing up her bachelor's degree right now and be graduating in just a few weeks. Her goal is to help other people who are suffering with PTSD and other, mental disorders that are caused by trauma. And, I can't help but to think that's because, partially at least, she can identify with some of that, of how it feels to just be harmed by others or your environment or whatever. And, I know that she's going to be an amazing resource for people when she really starts diving into that as a career.
Well, I mean, she's a professional trauma. She's experienced it herself.
For sure.
I mean, I do remember one day we did have to hit the pause button on the protest because we needed a break. I mean, she needed a break. So she didn't even go to school that day. She missed tests. She was constantly put into classes on Zoom, if I recall correctly, and then they would basically cut her off and remove her access.
Or they wouldn't turn it on at all. I mean, you had teachers who were supposed, at the time, there was also there was something set up where if you were out for COVID because you were sick, you could access via Zoom. So the Zoom was always supposed to be live every single day, every single class, but she would go to her classes and they'd be turned off. And so she couldn't access any of them. So she was there for 6 weeks, and I'll tell you why she left. Like I had said at the beginning, that this was when she started the protest, it was the first day of the new semester. We had gone through 6 weeks of teachers alienating her, refusing her education, all of that. And suddenly Newsom had decided that we didn't need our masks anymore, right? And so I believe it was on March 14th of 2022 that he undid the mask mandate. And her last day at Coronado was the previous Friday. I did that intentionally. I knew that her trying to go back into those classrooms was going to be a huge problem. These are literally teachers who had, bullied her for 6 weeks. How was she supposed to go back in a classroom and act like it's fine? And she had an F in every single class. So we pulled her out. We had her go into a charter program, and she was able to complete all of her classes on time with straight A's.
I believe she missed, a full third of an academic year.
She did.
Just because she didn't want to put a useless face ornament on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was rather shocking. I mean, there were times when I was actually out there. I think I was in Coronado teaching kids to protest. One of the things that was happening, I mean, you recall this, I would put videos up on Instagram, educational videos, talking to kids about the law, explaining to parents what it is that their kids can do, sit down in class, politely remove your mask, say no thank you. Here's the laws that support your protest. Here are your rights as it relates to the Constitution. And Instagram would pull the sound out of the videos so that the kids couldn't actually access the information they needed to push back peacefully and engage in civil disobedience. I mean, I must have been half a dozen videos. Most of them have been removed now. I'm not sure if I took them all down, but the first Rumble video I started, and that's the one that you're going to get to watch here, was me in the park at Coronado, on Coronado Island, the day Gavin Newsom decided to lift the mandates. By the way, he said that the emergency was going to be ended in 2 weeks, which is the dumbest thing you could possibly say, because what's the point of an arbitrary 2-week window if the emergency is going to end in the future? It's like,
yeah,
what are you doing? I remember the first Rumble video I made was me basically ranting in the park like a lunatic about how Instagram was cutting the sound off all of my videos and teaching kids, at least trying to get the message out, how to peacefully dissent. Right after that video, I actually went to Natomas in Sacramento in Gavin Newsom's backyard, and I led my first successful protest. I had kids that were able to go back to class, 2 kids, one in elementary school, one in high school, without masks, and they never had issues again for the next 2 weeks. So that was a huge win for me. It was a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know, it's interesting because I really thought when we first started talking and we were like, do you think we could, other kids would join Gabby? That was one of the things that we talked about was, are there other kids that would do it? And especially, I literally called the parents of the kids who had the mask underneath their chin, because I was thinking, if there's going to be kids who are going to do it, it's those kids. They don't want to wear their mask anyway. And I was shocked to have parents tell me, oh, well, I mean, I totally support what you're doing and your daughter is doing and how you're trying to, turn this all around. But like, what if my kid doesn't get picked up for baseball? What if they're, on the bench? Like, what if their friends' parents are mad at them because they're protesting? I was like, you've got to be kidding. Like, we're so short-sighted. Like, these are literally like, it's like air, right? It's like you need it to live. Like, how are you not teaching your kid to stand up for themselves? I'm not telling you to force your child to do anything, but if your child really has a belief that this is important, and I would say almost everybody I've ever talked to feels that it is important. The difference is the decision to stand up, and that is the harder part for sure, right? Not everybody can do that, has the willpower to stand against other dissenting, voices for sure. And it was really sad to me because I felt like Coronado, 3 military bases, home of the SEALs, like someone's going to stand up. I had so many parents that were totally on board, loved it, were excited, were hoping their kids were going to participate. And I really think that the one that we had to cancel because Gavin Newsom undid the mask mandate. We legitimately had kids who were going to go to class and take it off. And so I felt like there was finally going to be like a group of kids and we were going to see an outcome that we were really hoping for. And we just never got there. But Ryan, you and I protested out in front of the school.
We did. It was one of many schools I spent a lot of days sitting outside of
Yes.
with signs
Yes.
and teaching kids. I mean, I remember I did it at Coronado. I did it at a couple different schools up in Orange County, in Sacramento. It never made it to LA County. I'm not sure why that never happened, but San Diego definitely. And I was energized by the kids that I did meet who were willing to do it, but it's sad to me thinking back, it was so far and few between. Like you were saying, the parents were the ones who should have been encouraging their kids to stand up and actually learn what it's like to push back against someone who's infringing upon your rights. I mean, it's an extremely valuable lesson, and there was no better time in human history to teach that lesson. And so many parents were just unwilling to let their kids do it.
Yeah, it was certainly shocking. And I did have some parents who came and protested with me outside the school. I guess I was, as a mom, you're trying to shield your kid from what you can. And I felt like I didn't know what I was going to get. And Ryan, you and I both experienced some of these kids were so nasty to us, so nasty, so rude, so disrespectful. I thought, oh my gosh, if I knew my kid ever said that out loud, I lose my mind. Just nastiness. Like they just couldn't wrap their head around what we were doing. And then we had parents who would come and some of them would honk and they give you a thumbs up and all that. None of them willing to stand out of their own car and stand beside you or speak up at a school board meeting, but they're going to honk at you on the line. Then you had other parents who would give you a thumbs down, right? And you're just like, that's so disappointing. Your kid is, not learning anything of value from the situation. They're just seeing us protest and then they're seeing you boo and then they're getting out of the car. They're not grasping what this really is about. But I had a solid group of moms that would come and stand beside me in the mornings. And I am just so grateful for that. I would have stood by myself because Gabby was inside by herself. And so that was important. But it definitely just felt, which is what I wish Gabby had, right? Like just having that support that you're not alone and that other people value what you're doing and it is meaningful. Like there's just not enough thank yous I could give out for that.
I mean, it's important for us to think back on these situations, as unpleasant as it was, but to remember and to use it as a teaching moment so that when this does happen again, and it will, I mean, this is not the last time, I think, in my lifetime where we're going to be dealing with mass mandates from a medical perspective, that they're going to require people to use their rational brains and push back peacefully. Otherwise, the right goes away. And I mean, it's my belief, and I'm sure Gavin Newsom would never even recognize this, but I believe that, the protests that we were leading and that you were participating in, that had a huge impact on the masks actually coming off, because they didn't want to take those off. They wanted to keep those on the kids. One of the things that people don't understand is that the teachers unions were the ones that were driving the mask mandates. They had signed as soon as the school shut down, they had gone into negotiate with what the reopening plan was supposed to be. And they signed what were called memorandums of understanding. Most school districts did this with their teachers unions. It happened in Coronado. And by the way, it's kind of funny to me that some of the board members had kids that were in the district as teachers and part of the union, and they were negotiating to benefit them. Not going to name names, but that did happen. And it's just shocking to me that the teachers were using the mental health of children as leverage to get more benefits for themselves. I mean, they were throwing these kids' lives away to benefit themselves. And it's really sad to me that people who are responsible for educating and caring for our children could so callously be self-interested and watching these kids. I mean, I said it before a little while ago, but kids were jumping off bridges across California. They were laying down on railroad tracks and taking their lives because there was no hope. The people who were supposed to be providing a hopeful viewpoint and a hopeful perspective for them about the future were saying, no, this is more important. Protecting these old and weak people in society is more important than you having a bright future. Dehumanizing. It's humiliating for the kids, and it broke my heart. It caused me to have to take action. And I'm sure you felt the same way. I think Gabrielle is so wise beyond her years when she was a teenager to recognize, like, no. I'm not going to live in a society where this is mandated and I don't get access to breathe.
I think the difference too is like as a parent, right? Like I'm I live in a world where I make hard decisions all day long. I do things that are not popular. That's okay. And for me, I've tried to empower my girls to understand that they can do the same, and that doing the right thing is not the easy thing a lot of the time. And with the society that we have, there's so much just compliance. No one's using just their rational thinking. And so I am thankful because I had these conversations with my girls, especially when we were on the extended COVID lockdown. My older daughter, she graduated in 2020, so she was still at home at that time. And we had a lot of really difficult conversations about life, things going on in the world, right? Them trying to understand why is this happening? Does this even make sense? And so when you're not having those really difficult conversations in the home, you can't expect these kids to behave any other way than how they are and just kind of being those sheep, because that's the environment that they grow up in, you know? And so I didn't grow up like that. My dad was, you know, very open on a lot of difficult topics. He was law enforcement. We talked about a lot of difficult things. And so I feel like it's my job as a parent to prepare my kids for what's coming out in this world, and they're young adults and they're thriving and they're doing so well. And for that, I'm thankful. I mean, despite the hardships, there's some really positive things that are coming out of it.
Yeah, and it's kids like Gabby that I point my daughters to have examples of folks that actually know how to do the right thing and are willing to do the difficult thing, even when it's that there's an easier route. And I just, to all the kids across California that did protest with me, thank you. I really do owe you a huge debt of gratitude, just because I have kids and you stood up for them. So thanks, Gabby. Thanks, Troy. Thank you to all the kids that really stood up and fought back. So let's talk a bit about the lawsuit. So we eventually did file a lawsuit. I believe it was August of 23 that when we filed, but don't quote me on the date because I'm 22. Okay, yeah. August of 22. And we named basically all of the teachers, the administrators, the school board members, everyone that was involved in punishing Gabrielle and trying to silence her viewpoint on the propriety of masking are the folks that we named.
Yes.
So we filed a 1983 claim. For people who don't understand what that is the Civil Rights Act. That is the Ku Klux Klan Act. Originally, that was the title of the act. And what it allows you to do is to sue people who act under color and authority of state law to deprive you of your constitutional rights. And the way we framed this lawsuit was a First Amendment free speech claim, among a few other claims as well. But the main idea was that removing a mask, but it was an act of expressive conduct, because every single person in the room, when Gabrielle would go in and sit down and not have a mask on, or would sit down and take her mask off, knew exactly what it was that she was trying to communicate when she was engaged in that conduct. So the question for expressive conduct from a court's perspective is supposed to be, would a reasonable observer understand the intended message? And given the context, every single person on campus knew exactly what Gabrielle was doing, especially as time went on. I mean, 6-week protest, there was no question as to why she was taking that mask off. It was an act of dissent and an act of defiance. And she didn't bother anyone when she protested. She didn't disrupt the classroom environment. The school would often disrupt learning to move the class, to try to get away from her. I mean, she literally chased her class from classroom to classroom on days.
She did.
Going in, she had a teacher at one point, I believe, I forget the lady's name, but she actually blocked her from entering a classroom and threatened to call the police.
That was actually the principal.
Yeah.
Yeah. The principal that was the day that the police showed up for trespassing. Gabby tried to go into, I believe it was her math class, and the principal was standing there and said, "I dare you to touch me." And knowing that the police were coming.
Yeah, she wanted to send this girl to jail. Mm-hmm. It's really disgusting what they did.
But she did have other teachers where they would start in the classroom and then they would all get up. They would go to another classroom and try to leave her there. And she'd call me and I'm like, just follow that. You're supposed to be in this class right now. And then the teacher ended up having all the kids outside in the quad, learning outside. So then you had parents who were livid, who called and were, sending emails and coming to the district saying, I didn't authorize for you to use my kid as a pawn in this whole thing. And so it kind of was turning on them a little bit. I was kind of hoping we were going to maybe be getting a little bit more leverage where they could see like other parents were not tolerating this, but that didn't happen.
Yeah. Too many kids were cowards, unfortunately, and their parents in particular were the ones who were the cowards because they should have been encouraging this. But we filed a lawsuit, and then we got hit with the 4 anti-SLAPP motions. We talked about that. Do you want to talk about the hearing from May of 23 with Judge Pollack? Because I believe you were there. You saw Tracy make the argument. And the transcript is rather shocking. Why don't you just kind of walk us through what happened at that hearing from your perspective?
It was really weird because I don't know what I thought was going to happen when we got there, but I almost thought for a moment that we were all going to kind of hear like what was Coronado Unified's perspective, what our perspective was as, you know, Gabby's parents and attorneys. And because we were really just trying to get an opportunity to get the case heard. And this judge sat down and immediately, he was so hostile. He was so hostile to Tracy and he was so favorable for Coronado. I was like, what is going on here? Like, he just kept talking and talking and talking. And he wasn't asking questions. He wasn't trying to learn what was going on. He literally, it was like he had read whatever he was provided. He had made a decision before he showed up. And he was just telling us all what it was. And the saddest part for me, well, there's a couple of things. First, he never asked Gabby one question, right? He made a lot of assumptions for someone. She was sitting right there. He could have asked her, like, I was reading this and I don't understand. Can you elaborate? Whatever it is, right? And Tracy was doing her best to try to, you know, help him understand the viewpoint. But the worst part for my husband, Rob, and I was first, he told us we were horrible parents. And I use that word horrible. That's what he said. We were horrible parents for allowing our 16-year-old child to do this protest for 6 weeks. First off, at 16 years old, I'd like to think that my child is capable of making some decisions on her own, right? And hopefully, I mean, in just another year after that, she was off to college. So I'm hoping that I've instilled some things in her, you know, for her to consider when she would make decisions. And she wasn't harming herself. She wasn't harming anybody else. There was no need for us to say, no, don't do that. But I will say, of course, we were supportive. The whole thing seemed crazy. I'd been fighting it for 2 years before it even started. So the fact that he said Rob and I were horrible parents, that was, I don't think I've ever had anybody say that to me. So that was hard to hear. Second, and the hardest thing to hear, was for him to say that Gabby showing up on campus, and he said she was an asymptomatic carrier. So 2 things about that. One, the asymptomatic carrier thing is a lie. It's just something that the media made up. It's a talking point. It doesn't actually exist. So when we're saying in a court of law that somebody has something that isn't even real, is super questionable, right? Like, this guy's supposed to be educated and knowledgeable, and he's saying things like this, and he's literally like quoting CNN. It's ridiculous. But for him to say that she had it, even though to this day, Gabby has never had COVID, then said that her being on campus was as dangerous as if she had brought a gun, just being there unmasked. In what world does that make sense? That some child sitting quietly on campus would be as dangerous as if she showed up with a gun. Like, that is a disgusting comparison. And as a, you know, as a judge, as an elected official, like, there just aren't even words. Like, we're sitting there dumbfounded. Then on top of that, we tried to, Tracy tried to discuss the fact that the asymptomatic carrier thing was not real, but in the kindest of ways. And he said, well, what doctor are you going to bring in here? Some quack? Which conveniently got left out of the transcript, which I thought was interesting, right? Something is not quite right in the California court system, as you can continue to discuss, because we never have even had an opportunity And now 2 years, right? Is it 2 years? 3 years? It's 3 years. Gosh, time has just gone by. 3 years to actually present this case in front of anybody who can make a decision.
Right.
That's not the country that I thought I lived in.
No, I mean, just so people understand, and I'm going to take a moment to clarify something I said in the first part of this series. So what happened here when we talk about asymptomatic transmission and the judge assuming that Gabrielle was an asymptomatic carrier, we alleged in the complaint, and we provided declarations to the court from Gabrielle, from I believe yourself as well, about her health. And one of the things that we alleged, and one of the things that we provided support for, sworn statements to the effect of, was that she was a perfectly healthy child at all relevant times. She did not have COVID.
Nope.
And the judge, instead of adjudicating facts and allowing us to present evidence on those facts at trial, even though there were, I believe, declarations from the other side saying that she was an asymptomatic spreader, that's a question of fact for a jury to decide. The judge did what is basically the most inappropriate thing I've ever seen a judicial officer do, is he precluded us from presenting evidence of that fact by taking what's called judicial notice of the fact that our client was an asymptomatic spreader. So for people who don't understand what judicial notice is a mechanism that allows a court to take notice of a fact without having the parties present evidence. Typically, this is used for facts that are readily determinable within the court's jurisdiction that are not subject to dispute. They're beyond dispute. So, for example, an appropriate thing to take judicial notice of would be the fact that the city of San Diego is in California. That's the typical thing that you do when you take judicial notice. You can take judicial notice of the fact that there's like a birth certificate and it proves this person is a U.S. citizen, things like that you really can't dispute. If there is a question as to the validity of the fact, it's supposed to be adjudicated by a jury. And here, not only did the court take judicial notice to defeat our claims at the outset, he took judicial notice of a fact that is highly disputed. One, asymptomatic spread exists. That was the first thing he took judicial notice of. And two, he found that Gabrielle was an asymptomatic spreader. There was no evidence presented of that fact at all. He assumed it, and he dismissed the case on that basis, it's an abuse of the judicial power. It's completely antithetical to our entire system of justice. And we're still fighting that today. We're still trying to convince courts, now the U.S. Supreme Court, to consider that we never had our day in court. We were never provided due process. The case was tossed on a bullcrap assumption and a bullcrap procedural gimmick where they flipped the burden to us to do something the defendants were supposed to do. Even till today, there is not a single judicial explanation as to what it was that the defendants were doing that constitutes free speech or protected activity. It was assumed that shutting down a dissenting viewpoint on the topic of masking was free speech for the government, which inverts the First Amendment. There is no First Amendment in California anymore based on this precedent. You don't have free speech rights because even if you try to vindicate your claims, you're going to get hit now with attorney's fees because they're just going to say, well, the state was expressing the alternative viewpoint and they have First Amendment rights and therefore anti-SLAPP applies. And by the way, here's a 6-figure attorney fee award against you. Thanks for playing the game. That's what they say. I mean, it's just gross.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that is our situation, right? Our situation is that they say we owe over $100,000 to pay their attorney's fees, for which we have not had our day in court. And they just, they're going to walk away unscathed if this is not taken seriously. I mean, everything that we know to be true in this country and how we are protected by our Constitution is going up in flames. And nobody really sees it because it's hidden, it's pressed really well, right? And so I hope that anybody who takes their First Amendment rights super seriously will pass this on to a friend that they care about, because the country that we all were under the perception exists doesn't currently.
And so I think we're going to be wrapping up, at least with Nicole's part of this. We're actually going to be doing another part. Tracy Henderson was supposed to be here with us in studio today. She had a let's call it a snafu at the airport, and was unable to make her connecting flight. So I'm going to be doing an interview with her this weekend over Zoom, and we're going to be putting these two together. But in the meantime, if this is the latter part, we're going to just put it on the record. Please go to thegavelproject.com. We do need your support for this case. We are taking it to SCOTUS. We did file an emergency stay application. Justice Kagan denied that a week and a half ago. So we've got to get our petition for certiorari in before the end of this month. This is March 2026. I've already started drafting it, but there are going to be some rather significant costs, including printing costs, shipping costs. We actually have to send hard copies of the documents and the appendix that we print. So we're talking about thousands of dollars here. As well, we want to hire outside counsel, someone who has a significant amount of experience in the Supreme Court to help us basically get the final preparations for the filing done. But I am getting my license in SCOTUS right now. I'm in the process. So looking forward to making my first appearance there, God willing, and we'll be able to argue. I'll get to go say hi to my old professor, Justice Alito, and hopefully he remembers me. I don't know if he will. I made him laugh in class. There was and so just a quick side note, when I was in my third year of law school in Regent University in Virginia Beach, I was chosen as one of 16 students to go to a constitutional seminar taught by Justice Alito and the former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, who was my dean. And when we were there, one of the first things that we were talking about was, Article 3 judges, how it is that we select judges for the federal bench, the process for basically getting confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. And the first question that was posed to the entire class was, well, how should we do this? And so I came up with this elaborate explanation that was akin to the Hunger Games. And
yes,
he caught on. He goes, "Are you explaining the Hunger Games?" And I go, "Yes, sir, I am. That's how we should do this." And he laughed pretty hard. So hopefully he remembers that. Anyway, this is Saving Gen Alpha by the Gavel Project. I'm your host, Ryan Heath, and it's been a pleasure having Nicole with me today. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to getting all of this episode out and having people hopefully share it. We need support, and we need more eyeballs on this story. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for just believing in my girl, believing in me for the last 4 years. There's just not enough words to say thank you.
My pleasure. That's it.